Hello everyone, welcome you all to Believers as Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing about Maldives and its present recent ban that it has put, a generational ban on the use of tobacco. And in this particular video, we will try and understand what this ban is all about, and we will also try and discuss pretty much about the tobacco use, the harmful effects, and also pretty much related to Maldives as to how Maldives would try and ensure that the enforcement would take place, and in the end we will also try and solve one prelims question. So why is this a news? Is because of the recent ban that it has tried to enforce, and in fact this is a nationwide ban that it has put on the usage of tobacco, and this makes Maldives the only country in the world to enforce such a ban, and this particular ban is a generational ban. So this is also something very important you have to keep in mind. So it is not a normal ban, much like any other bans which probably talks about banning it to a particular category of people. Let's say a particular age group for that matter. Let's say children less than 18 years need not smoke, or children less than 21 years of age need not smoke. But it is not that kind of a ban, rather a generational ban. So we will see what that generational ban is also in this particular video. However, under this new rule, anyone born on or after Jan 1st, 2007 will not be allowed to smoke, purchase, or even sell tobacco products. So I think you might have observed that there is a particular date mentioned, a deadline. Means any particular kid who has, or let's say who is born after 2007 is absolutely not eligible or cannot ever smoke a cigarette or purchase a cigarette and even sell tobacco products. So this has got something to do with the generational ban that we are going to talk in the further slides. So what is this generational ban? See, a generational ban is kind of a public health policy, much like any other policy, where in Maldives perspective, it is the ban that they have put on the usage of tobacco to prohibit individuals of certain group, right? Certain group, and to make sure that these particular group do not use it. So traditional ban, or let's say the conventional ban, how does it happen? Let's say any particular, let's say the use of alcohol for that matter, or even for that matter, tobacco. So what used to happen in the conventional way of banning is an age group would have been set, let's say 21 years, or let's say 18 years. So now any kid or any individual who is below the age of 18 or below the age of 21 years old cannot smoke. So that is a normal ban. So what happens? Let's say a particular individual is 17 years old right now, and he will probably wait until he is turning 18. The moment he turns 18, so now he becomes legally enforced, or let's say now he becomes absolutely legal for him to, probably even if he's smoking a cigarette, or probably even if he's using alcohol. Now, obviously, it is not illegal because he has crossed that particular age group, right? So this is the normal ban. But on the other hand, generational ban is something where a particular time period is specified. So here in this particular Maldives case, the time period is 2007. So now what this states is that any individual, any kid who are born above the age of, or let's say who are born after 2007, no matter, irrespective of where they are from, irrespective of what they are doing, anybody after 2007 born, they can never use or never sell or never purchase any tobacco products in Maldives for the rest of their life, right? So this is something which is going to transform on a long term, and this generational ban is probably to make sure that over a particular period of time in the future, after a few generations, that tobacco usage completely gets eradicated, or tobacco use completely gets erased out of the history of that particular country. So that is what is your generational ban. So a specific year will be mentioned, and this specific year will be mentioned to ensure that no new generation becomes addicted to smoking, or for that matter, alcohol. But here in Maldives case, it is specifically respect to tobacco. And in fact, I have to keep in mind that it was not Maldives, which is the very first country to bring up this particular ban. In fact, Maldives becomes the first country to enforce the generational ban on tobacco. But however, way back in 2023, New Zealand also had come up with a similar proposal, but however, it had gotten rejected. So, but still, for the example, keep in mind that even it was, the similar kind of law was also introduced, or let's say brought in by the New Zealand government as well. But later, however, it was repealed. But however, what is the aim of this generational ban? It is to make sure that the future generations completely becomes smoke free, or they completely stop the use of the smoking, correct? So now, why is this that important? Because now if you see, smoking is that kind of an activity, or smoking is that kind of a behavior which does not have any validation. People smoke saying that they are probably in order to counter anxiety, or probably because in order to cope up with the stress, they smoke a cigarette, right? And with respect to the WHO statistics, the very recent statistics, the statistics gives a very alarming figure. It states that almost half of the tobacco's users, right? Tobacco kills up to half of its users who don't quit. So people might have often come across this particular reel, or this particular troll, where they say that probably the person who told me to stop quitting, or let's say to stop smoking, the person himself is dead now, right? I mean, these kind of quotes are something that kind of in a way alternatively motivates people to still continue smoking. But the WHO statistics, it clearly states that tobacco has killed up to half of its users. So now doesn't mean that the rest of the half they are alive, so we will start smoking, right? Because the next data is even more alarming, because it states that it has killed, tobacco kills more than 7 million people each year, and not just that, including an estimated of 1.6 million non-smokers. So every year there are about 7 million people who are getting killed because of tobacco use. And what's worse is that amongst the 7 million people, 1.6 million, or let's say almost 1.5 million people are those who are non-smokers. Probably they are dying because of the second-hand smokes, right? Or we also call it passive smoking, the normal dialect. And another data states that around 80% of the world's 1.3 billion tobacco users live mostly in the low and middle income countries, which adds even more burden to their country's economy, because 80% of the world's population, right, 80% of the people amongst the tobacco users, they are mostly from the low and middle income countries. So imagine the kind of healthcare cost that the country has to incur because of this tobacco usage. So basically this is not a necessity, but it is just a way, or let's say it is just a means how people have found to just probably get addicted to another drug. So even this is also pretty much like a drug, an addiction, a bad addiction for that matter, right? So hence this generational gap which Maldives has put or brought in is something very transformational, and it is of course a very good initiative. So now the next topic is it a good step? Yes, of course it is a very progressive steps, considering all the major benefits. First is the health benefits, second is the economic impact, third is the behavioral change. So health benefits, as we discussed, a lot of people, majority of the people, more than 7 million people are dying every year because of the tobacco, and of which around 1.5 million people who are non-smokers are also dying, and people who are not dying are also suffering from lot of cardiovascular diseases, right? And even many people are even still suffering from lung cancer, correct? And a lot of other health related issues are also associated with tobacco consumption, and also it adds more burden on the economic impact of that particular region or that particular country, because imagine the health cost, or let's say the healthcare sector which needs to invest in addressing all these major health problems of the people. And also this is going to put a huge hole in the pocket of the people as well, because let's say even a normal person who is probably earning a daily wage of 500 rupees himself, if he probably smokes 10 cigarettes in a day, right, that alone costs him almost 150 to 200 rupees. Let's say almost half of his daily earning goes just for cigarettes. And imagine the economic impact that it creates. not just to his family, but overall for the entire economy as well. And also, this is also a good step because of the behavioral change that it tries to bring, because the kind of social impact that will happen once if the tobacco is banned, and that once if it becomes very visible, so even that will pretty much help in change the behavior of other people around the country as well, other countries even possible. But still, all these possibilities and all these advantages do also come with a lot of challenges as well. Of course, first and foremost, biggest challenges, how was the government going to enforce it? Because they have put a deadline which is 2007, and any person who is born, or let's say any child individual is born after 2007 has to definitely not use, and it is absolutely illegal for anyone born after 2007 to consume tobacco now. So how will the government be able to properly identify which particular individual is not consuming and which particular individual is consuming? And also, the government enforcement has to be made sure that it even takes care of all the local shops as well, like probably even when they have to sell a particular tobacco, they have to make sure that they check the IDs as well. And also the government has to make sure that it needs to bring some transparency in terms of how the IDs are also given to the people. So that obviously is a very huge problem in itself as to how the enforcement happens, because it is very difficult to monitor individual use and the illegal sales. Next is, this can even rise or bring up more black market as well, because once a particular product, or let's say once a particular substance is banned, and let's say we have more than half, or let's say more than 50% of the population who are mostly dependent on that particular substance, in this case tobacco. So just because the government has banned doesn't mean the people will stop using, right? There will be an alternative means. Another black market will be created where these tobaccos can be smuggled, right? So the smuggling's activity with respect to tobacco will also increase, right? So hence the restriction on these particular substances which are absolutely in use with almost at least 50% and more of the population will increase smuggling or unregulated sales as well. So even that is also one of the problems in terms of enforcement. How is the government going to enforce it? Next is freedom concerns, because critics argue that it might limit personal choice and autonomy, because all around the world there is no such ban like this. And let's say even if there is a ban, probably if a ban was something like the conventional ban, like saying that anyone below the age of 18 should not smoke, probably would have been fine. But now what about those people, after 2007, in their entire lifetime they are not supposed to, or they are not allowed to probably use the tobacco in their entire lifetime. And also this freedom concern also talks about the discriminatory tendency with this law as well, because what about that particular kid or that particular individual who's born in 2006, right? So obviously now he is absolutely legal, he can go consume cigarette, consume tobacco. So now this particular ban will not be applicable for this particular category, or anybody who is below 2007 years of age, or let's say anybody who was born below 2007, right? So now this is also something very discriminatory, and even it questions the freedom concerns of the people as well. And last but not the least, the economic loss, because also we are talking about the total income, the revenue that the government also earns by selling these tobaccos. And also what about the sellers, the tobacco sellers, especially the small vendors, right? So even they could face livelihood issues, and probably another alternative also has to be provided, right? So this will also have a very great global impact as well, considering the kind of tobacco production losses that might incur, and even this might even quite a bit change the global supply chain in terms of how these kind of substances were traded before, right? So this is all for this particular video. So even before we end this particular video, let's solve one prelims question. Consider the following statements regarding the generational tobacco ban recently introduced by the Maldives. Number one, the ban prohibits the use, sale and purchase of tobacco products by individuals born on or after January 1st, 2007. The policy aims to phase out tobacco consumption gradually by restricting access for future generations rather than imposing an immediate total ban. The Maldives is the second country after New Zealand to enforce such a nationwide generational ban. Comment your answers in the comment section below. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a wonderful day.